Welcome back. I've got Shawn Minard on the line. Shawn, how are you?
I'm doing great. Doing great.
Love the VT poster at the back, by the way. So that's
Thank
cool.
you.
Yeah,
Go
yeah.
Hokies.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Um, um, yeah, I'm originally from Michigan, but I love college sports. It's just the excitement and the energy of it. I know we're just, a few weeks from, all the bowl games and all that, but March Madness is rapidly approaching,
That's right.
and it's just nonstop chaos and fun just to watch the stories and the dynamics of it. So it's not what we're here to talk about, but if it comes into it, there's some synergies between sports and teams and performance and culture and what we're going to talk about. So why don't you introduce yourself and then we'll jump into the conversation.
Sure. My name is Shawn Minard. I'm our Chief People Officer at Frazier and Deeter. We're a top 40 accounting and advisory firm here in the US. I have been with Frazier and Deeter for a little over 4 years. And prior to that, I spent about 20 years in the technology space. So I spent 10 years at E-Trade Financial and 10 years at a company called Ultimate Software, which is now known as UKG. And I grew up in the HR space, done a little bit of all the things within HR. I've done all the different jobs. And so as Chief People Officer here at Frazier and Deeter, I'm responsible for all of our learning and development, recruitment, employee experience, performance management, you name it. It falls under the HR umbrella. That's what I'm focused on. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. I've been here for about 15 years. Originally from Illinois, but grew up right outside of DC. Went to Virginia Tech, met my lovely wife there, and we have an 18 and a 16-year-old children. One getting ready for college, and so we're going through that fun process of applications and trying to figure out where he's going to head off. But yeah, in my spare time, I like to do a little bit of golf. I've coached baseball my son's whole life, been a part of his journey with that, and really, really enjoy, you know, working on different things for work when it comes to leadership development, recruitment efforts, getting out into the community and seeing how I can help.
Oh, there's no shortage of great universities that have great baseball teams. So if that's the angle that your son wants to go in, you've got a plethora of options and choices around there. Certainly helps that he's breathing in the air from Atlanta because the baseball team there has for the last 30 years, other than a couple of hiccups here and there,
Yeah,
have been decent to say the
pretty
least.
good. That's right.
Yeah, it's fun to watch them. I mean, I grew up in Detroit, and I remember when we first got cable television to date myself. We initially didn't get WGN, so unlike the rest of the
Mhm.
world that was watching the Cubs,
That's
we
right.
got we got TBS. So
Hmm.
I grew up watching the Braves, and that was the start of Bobby Cox and
Yep.
the plethora of Cy Young Award winners, and winning all those games and being just it's like who's Atlanta going to play, is
That's
basically
right.
what it ended up being. And I actually had a Braves jacket, and I was in Detroit, but I bought a Braves jacket. So because
Hmm.
at that time the Tigers were absolute trash, and I'm like, I'm done. So I wear
Yeah.
the Braves jacket all around. Everybody's looking at me like I had three heads, like, what are
Yeah.
you doing? And it wasn't, and that was before, Amazon and all that. So
Hmm.
that was not an easy acquisition to find a Braves
Oh,
jacket in
yeah, you got to
Detroit,
really
but
search.
I,
Yeah.
I did my recon and was able to secure one and wore that thing till it was just threads. But again, all that experience and the places that you've been in and all that, and when
Hmm.
you describe HR as like the umbrella, and that's really what HR is. It's you're managing all of these different individuals. You've got the management and the organization that says, okay, this is what we need. You have the resources there. Try to you basically play matchmaker in a lot of ways,
Hmm.
but also navigate personalities, challenges, growth, experiences, market demands. There's so many different things that a lot of people don't understand directly impact HR, even though it's not necessarily on the job description for somebody that works as a chief people officer. You literally have to be exposed to everything that's going on, even though you're like, okay, sales are doing? What's this? You have to be involved in that because it dictates on, do we have the people right now to be able to navigate through this or adjust to this or take advantage of this opportunity? And it's, when you're in that type of role, it's better to be prepared before they ask you,
That's right.
because then you're like, okay, yeah, I know who we have, and your people. It doesn't matter how big your company is. You'll know your people, or your managers will be able to give you reports on who you have in your staff. But I think one of the many things I should say that you do really well is you're focusing on the culture side of things. And we hear about workplace culture all the time. And
Yeah,
but from this aspect, you do a really good job, and the organization has done great. And I'm sure you learn this from mentors, and just how you want to be treated too. There's You say workplace culture, and a lot of people think, oh,
mm,
well, that it's like, okay, you have this, it's fun, you got a great coffee machine, time off, the benefits are good, all that stuff. That's great. Those are all nice things to have, and you should usually have a lot of those things. But when your people feel like that they belong to something, not just I go to work, but they feel that they belong there, that is a different equation. It changes things. It cuts down on reduction of staff. Performance issues don't tend to happen as much. Everybody kind of understands, even if they weren't trained, what everybody else is doing, and at
yeah,
least have an understanding of what everybody's doing, and how my part in that is going to help them do their job, instead of, well, that's not my job, that's not my department. You don't hear that in organizations, that there's a sense of belonging. We don't do that. If anything, you have, let me help you out with that. Even
yeah,
though it's like, I don't know what I'm doing, can you show me real quick? All right, there. And it's just that it's so wonderful to see that. And it's hard work though, kids.
yeah,
It's not easy to implement. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
yeah. You know, I agree with everything you said. Here at Frazier and Deeter, we kind of the way we view culture, it's the everyday interactions of the employees. It's not what you say your values are on a PowerPoint deck. It's not, some cool slogan. It's actually what's happening within your employee base and how they are interacting with each other. And those interactions matter. So, we ask our leaders to model it from the top. It's the way you greet people. It's the way you talk about what you've got coming up this weekend, and then remembering to follow up with someone on how that thing went when you get back on Monday. It can be something as small as that. It's not getting on the elevator and being quiet like most people are, but actually striking up a conversation. And then you might end up finishing it for 30 seconds once you get off the elevator. It's doing little things like taking the first few minutes of a meeting and talking about non-business things. Everyone's busy. Everyone's got back-to-back meetings. You got your 30-minute meetings, you got your hour meetings, you got all of that. But it doesn't take much for 3 or 4 minutes to talk about what people got going on personally, and connecting in that way. We're here at Frazier Deere, we're hybrid. We were the first accounting firm to be hybrid certified by a third party. And that means that we're really intentional about the way we do it. Everyone's in the office. We have 14 different locations across the US and in the UK and India. So we've got a lot of locations. Everyone's in the office 2 or 3 days a week. And then about 10% of our workforce is fully remote. So we're a little over 800 employees right now. And we're really intentional about the way we gather, the way we learn, and the way we collaborate. And so each of our, you know, what I would call our departments they have a hybrid certification plan. And when everyone's in the office, you know, we're making sure that people are getting a chance to meet face to face and do a lunch and learn or get together and collaborate as a team. So we don't have people showing up in the office, sitting in a cubicle and on Zoom all day with other team members because they could have done that from home. And so we'll kind of pour in when we're here, and when we're at home, we have Zoom days. And so, and with our remote folks, we'll flip the script. And so instead of everybody being face to face for certain learning things, we'll make sure, even if you're sitting at your desk, everyone's going to go on Zoom. So all of our remote workers feel that parity and feel that equal setting to where everyone's got the Brady Bunch look on Zoom together for that particular meeting or whatever. So we'll do that together. And I'm in the accounting industry. We do a ton of like, hey, in busy season, we're ordering lunches and dinners into the office and everything like that. Well, for our remote people, we send them Uber Eats gift cards. We send them Starbucks. We make sure that they get something, even if they're working at home, to show that we care, that they're putting in those extra hours for our clients. And then we have an engagement platform. It's called Motivosity, and I love it because it runs different challenges, team events, fun activities for all employees across the globe. And so people, it's almost like, you can give shout outs, you can give points, people can use it towards your, employee swag store to where you buy more gear. You can use it for gift cards, you can use it for a whole bunch of stuff. But, we have everyone gives out points to each other with kudos. And the take up on that is huge within our employee base. And it's an opportunity to call people out for a job well done. It takes 2 seconds and it's completely embedded in like our company intranet. So it's really easy to get to. Those are a few things that we do from a culture perspective at the highest level that I think permeates throughout the firm, and everybody kind of feels that torch that they're carrying, that the everyday interactions matter.
Yeah, and there are organizations that will do that, but they don't. It feels transactional.
Yeah.
Where in your environment, it's well, yeah, that's just what we do here. That's who we are, and it's subtle, but it's huge. And I think back, I worked at a dot back in the .com days. I worked for an
Hmm.
internet market research firm, and that was during, and I worked in IT, and you remember that time. It was zany where, there was more jobs than people. So you'd get recruiters calling you literally months
Hmm.
after they placed you saying, "Hey, how do you like it there?" "Oh, thanks, Dan. Thanks for checking in. I like it here." "Do you really like it there?" Like,
Yeah.
What do you mean, Dan?" "Well,
Yeah.
I've
I
got
think
this role."
so. Yeah.
"Yeah." Yeah, right. It's like, I got, it's like, I like, why, what do you have in mind? "Well, I got this other job that's very similar to that, and it pays, 25,000 more a year." "This
Mhm.
job sucks, Dan. Get me out of here now." You know, uh,
That's right.
I'm writing his name down. I gotta reconnect with him. I haven't talked with him in decades, but I think I mentioned his name a few times on the show. It's like, I gotta get a hold of him.
That's
Um,
great.
but I went to work for this, market internet market research firm, and it was still during the craziness and stuff like that. And that team, we were startup. I think I was employee number 32. They've got well over 1,000 employees,
Mhm.
global, public traded, all that good stuff now. So I was in there in kind of the early setup days,
Yeah.
and it was an absolute blast. Just a blast to work there. And I'd get calls from Dan and from other people say, "Hey, we got," I'm like, "Not interested." And it was paying more. I mean, I could have, jumped up again. I'm like, "No,
Hmm.
I'm good."
Yep.
Um, my first wife probably wanted me to take that higher job, for more money, but I'm gonna end it right there before I say anything else. I don't talk bad about my kid's mom. That's a no-no. Won't do it. But I remember that, and it was just very similar culture where they would do things out of the blue. It's like, great job on setting up that data center.
Yeah.
Here's a $500 Best Buy gift card. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
like,
doing my job.
oh,
Okay. Yeah, that's
all
right. Yeah.
right, cool. Yeah, it's like, all right, time to go to Best Buy this weekend. What
Hmm.
toy am I going to buy? And so there was that. And you were mentioning about just belonging and listening, things like that. It reminded me, I've shared this on the show several times. I took over a very dysfunctional healthcare organization. It was about 12 years ago now, and they'd been around at that point just over 2 years, and they were averaging, actually 3 years. So they were averaging almost 90% turnover. So nine
Ooh.
out of 10 people were leaving. These are master's level and above credentialed
Yeah.
professionals. They were ejecting because it was, in quoting the board chair that I worked with, "This is a toxic cesspool." And I'm like, I'm in.
Mm.
And all my counterparts, in the industry are like, "Are you crazy?" And of course, my response is, Of course I'm crazy. You know that. But
Hmm.
I think I can do something here. And I did. And after a year, that turnover rate was reduced to
Yeah,
6%.
that's
I didn't
awesome.
fire I didn't fire anybody. I didn't give a single raise. I didn't improve the benefits. I didn't change anything. I didn't
Mm.
give them anything but my attention.
Yep.
I listened. I asked them, if you were sitting in my seat, what would you do?
Yeah.
Like, tell me. And they did. And I took the notes and I went to the board. I'm like, there's probably 10 things here that we could implement right away. Do I have approval to go forward? Yes. So
Yeah.
I did it. All of a sudden, it got everybody's attention. They're like, wait, we've been asking for that stuff for years. All of a sudden, we have it. Like,
Yeah.
who is this guy? And I was there for over 4 years
Hmm.
and turned it from a toxic cesspool to a place where we would get 1,000 resumes for a receptionist opportunity
Yep.
because word had spread in the industry that this is the place you want to work because they
Yeah.
take care of you, they listen, they make it fun, and it was an absolute blast. And was it hard to do? I had to be patient
Yeah.
because it's not something you just change. Like we're going to change the culture here, and you can, but it has to be intentional, has to be real,
That's
has
right.
to be authentic, genuine. Um, when you mess up, own it and say,
Yep.
"Yeah, I messed up on that one. I'm sorry, everybody." It's like I thought this was going to be that. We learned our
Hmm.
lesson. We're going to move forward on this, and then they got the courage to. They started working together better because there was everything was siloed and they started working together a lot better and they started coming up with ideas, how can we serve our community better, what are some things,
Yep.
and just created that safe place for them, and then they'd collaborate with each other and the belonging came about, and it was
Hmm.
just it's one of those things. I look back at that and go, really wish I would have had AI to chart all the notes and conversations because I would
That's right.
just use
That would have
use
been
that. I
easier.
mean, it'd be a book here. I mean, I
Yep.
could do it from
Yep.
memory, but what memory I have left. But I, I think more of it is just how do you go about it? But the formula is quoting the late Jim Rohn, easy to do, but it's also easy not to. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, I think a lot of companies, and you see it and you've experienced it, a lot of companies don't. And
Yeah.
it frustrates me that they don't because they're they're leaving money on the table, quite frankly, and losing money, even though they may not see it on the income statement. They're losing money on this.
That's right. That's right. One of the things you talk about, like getting in there and listening and, changing a culture with intention, but it takes time. One of the things that we really focus on here at Frazier and Deeter is vulnerability based trust. And so we believe that that's what unlocks the success and the growth of our firm. So we teach our leaders that it doesn't have to be a scary thing where you're like telling people your deepest, darkest secrets, but it's more about building a relationship with somebody personally and being able to admit your mistakes and ask for help and model that asking questions and being curious is the path to greater success. And so, we have three different leadership programs that we've built over the last 4 years, based off where you are in your career journey. If you're an early leader or someone getting close to maybe thinking about partner, or if you are a new partner here at our firm, we have different programs that we put people through. But at the base, the foundation is around trust, and we really try to instill that in all of our leaders. And if I take it a different step, so vulnerability based trust, we teach everybody that takes time and that takes shared experience and it takes, getting to know someone personally. And so that's something that you're building up over time with your team. But the other thing that we teach them is that there is an opposite way to look at trust. And we expect this out of you too. And that is trust by default. And so it's a mentality that we try to instill in all of our leaders, that we've hired very capable people, and especially if we're doing it right, and trusting them from a competency based perspective right out of the gate. It's empowering, and people are going to be more engaged. They're going to be more loyal. They're willing to go the extra mile. Um, and you think about it, if you take a step back, if you feel like you show up at a new job and you've got to earn somebody's trust, that tends to lead to people operating more out of fear, or they might cover up their mistakes. They may not ask questions because they feel like they might be judged. But if you trust someone implicitly from a competency based perspective, like you're going to see a huge return. And the way I explain this from like an autonomy and accountability standpoint for our leaders, because a lot of people are like, well, what does that look like? I use a bowling alley as the metaphor. Okay. So my job as the leader is to set the vision. The pins are the vision. Everybody sees the pins. Now, I don't care how you hit those pins. You can throw a straight ball, you can throw a curve ball, you can throw it granny style. I don't care. My job is if it looks like you're heading into the gutter, I bump you back along the path. And as long as you hit the pins, it's your Picasso on how you're going to get a lot of this work done. So that way you have ownership and autonomy. And ultimately, you're still being held accountable to the end goal. And so that's the way I try to frame it for people. So that way they don't get hung up in the micromanaging and try it this way and send me 16 check ins on your project milestones. Yes, you need those things along the way, but don't overkill it. Like let people, kind of earn their stripes a little bit and find their way. And they're going to be more loyal, more engaged. They're going to learn more along the way. You're going to be there to remove roadblocks versus tell them what to do. And so that's what we try to instill in all of our leadership programs. And it's been crazy from our engagement scores going way up over the last 4 years. Our turnover is way down, and we're down around 10% turnover, which is 10 to 12 points lower than the industry average. So like those things are starting to show on the ROI of like, hey, if you have a certain mentality and you stick to it, and everybody has that same institutional language and behaviors, it makes a difference for the people. And so those are just a few things that we're doing that kind of go along with what you were talking about.
Yeah, and I don't know if I said it before. In my original career, I worked for an accounting firm for the first 8 years. So
Gotcha.
did the audit.
Mm.
April 16th. I still feel relief in my shoulders, even though I haven't been in the
That's
industry
right.
since
Yeah.
'95. It's like, why does my shoulders feel lighter? I hear
Mhm.
birds chirping. What
That's right.
is this? Oh, is it spring? Maybe it's just the winter. No,
Yeah,
it's post-traumatic stress easing
that's
up.
right.
But when you have, like you just mentioned, you only have 10%, on average turnover. What that does, obviously, for a team is great because your colleagues are always around. It's just going to
Hmm.
be people that leave for a variety of reasons, maybe a better opportunity, a promotion that they could get, maybe they're relocating. Who knows? There could be a lot of different things. But from a client standpoint, I remember this and working
Hmm.
for companies, and we'd have our audit firm come in. I loved seeing, the same audit team come in year after year. Why? Well, you spend time with them, you get to know them a little bit, you
Yep.
help them out, you know how they work, you know what they're looking
They
for.
know
It's
your
like
business.
they
Yeah.
know your business, they know all of that. You're like, all right, they're going to ask for these receipts every time. So it's like, here, you're going to ask for these. And they look at you, it's like, I make notes. And then I tell, if they're not familiar, it's like, I used to do your job a long time ago. So I try to make it as painless as possible for you. Why? Because you get to do a lot of these over the next few months. And if I can make mine easier, yeah, hopefully it helps you a little bit. But again, that's a bigger picture that again isn't necessarily seen in the financial statements.
That's right.
But if you have happy customers, and you're like, you know what, we have an opportunity to go after this company and start,
Mhm.
being their firm. You can call up that client and say, hey, would you mind being a referral? And they're like, absolutely no problem. Why? Because they enjoy the experience. If you can make your clients somewhat enjoy the experience because you have a team and dynamics and all that, it bleeds through. When your accountants go to client sites sense and feel what type of environment they have back at the office. they,
That's
they,
right.
they just do. They may
Yep.
not consciously know, but subconsciously they do. And if they feel "Oh, they're pretty cool," a lot of times it's like, oh, they're great. I like these people. Yeah,
That's right.
why? Because they love working what they're doing. They're in their vocation. They're growing. They're thriving. They're supported. There's all these components. And it doesn't have to be just bean counters, ladies and gentlemen. It can be any
Hmm.
industry, manufacturing, healthcare. It doesn't matter. You
That's
create
right.
an environment where people can thrive and grow. It makes all the difference. One of the things that I did, going back to that healthcare organization I took care of for a while, I went and I told everybody as a team. I said, everyone wants to kind of know what my leadership style was, and this was early on before they really got into it. And I'm quoting a boss that I had at that market
Yeah.
research firm I worked at. I don't care when you get here. I don't care when you leave. As long as you do your job, everything's good. I will do
Hmm.
everything I can to give you all the tools and resources you need to thrive here. Not do your job, but thrive. Let
Yep.
me know what you need. We'll do it. I'm here. Um, I'm not going to micromanage you.
Yep.
I can barely manage myself. I'm not going to be able to manage all of you. Of course, everybody laughs and
Yeah. Yeah.
they say that's not true. It's like, well, I'm just being a little vulnerable and human here. Okay,
Hmm.
but you do that, all of a sudden they're like, okay, he's approachable, or my boss is approachable. They're not operating like you mentioned a moment ago in that state of fear. They go, I can actually have a conversation with them and say, hey, I got an idea, or "Ooh, I think I made a big mistake. Okay, well, how big? Anybody die? No. Okay, well, all right, then it's not that big. What happened? Okay, all right, let's figure this out. And and just ease it. They feel
Yeah.
horrible. You can tell. They're like they
Yeah.
feel bad. It's not like they're nonchalant about it. They're like, no, they feel horrible. It's like, okay, let's see if we can take some of that sting away from you. Like, it's okay. A lot of us make some mistakes, some of them big, but we're going to survive this. You've survived every day so far. Today's another day you'll survive, so don't worry about it. But again, when you create that kind of environment, then they're not afraid to make mistakes. You don't want them to, especially in accounting. It's numbers. Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't want to have to restate somebody's financials. That gets to
No.
be ugly.
That's
That is not a fun conversation for the partner or anybody else. And yeah, no, don't do that. Really try not to.
yeah.
But go ahead.
What you brought up, like helping people thrive, and so it kind of made me think. You know, the way we think about like the way our culture kind of just is, and you're like, hey, people just buy into it or whatever. Well, we're really intentional about the way we go find people, right? And so, because we have figured out a few things that like will help people thrive in our environment. So whether we're going on campus and looking for folks, right out of school, or we're hiring, experienced hires that got multiple years of experience, we prescribe to. I don't know if you read this book, but Patrick Lencioni wrote a book called The Advantage, and also, he wrote another book called The Ideal Team Player. And so we use a lot of things from those books that just feel like they fit like who we are and how we operate. And inside the ideal team player, it's the concept of humble, hungry, and smart. And so we actually will use humble, hungry, and smart as a part of our interview process, along with the competencies and our values and all of those things when we're trying to, really kind of get an understanding of who somebody is. But the thing that about it is you're looking for someone who's got all three. And when you hear smart, most people think, book smart, IQ. It actually isn't that. It's people smarts. It's emotional intelligence. It's EQ. And we have found that yes, we are in the accounting industry and technical expertise is paramount. It's table stakes. And if you have the foundation from a technical perspective, it's a lot easier to train you up on our methodologies and the way we do things and what systems we use. But it's a lot harder to train somebody on EQ, and people smarts, and personality styles and leadership styles. And so we look for that from right out of school all the way to someone we might be hiring that has a ton of years of experience, and we're looking for that connection of how they treat people. Can they read a room? Can they do they lead without authority? Like, what kind of collaboration and influencing skills do they have? So that's weighed just as much as the technical expertise when we're doing interviews. And what we have found is that that is um, like it's a step into our culture that helps people thrive. And so when you brought that up, it just made me think of like, well, that's what we look for up front before we've ever shook your hand, or right when we shake your hand and we don't know you yet, right? So,
Reminds me as we close the first healthcare clinic that I ran,
mhm,
all but two people, that's a decent sized team, all but two people are still there. And I hired them in 2007.
that's awesome. Yeah.
And why? Because they all worked well together. I knew
Yep.
what I was looking for. I knew
Yep.
the dynamics of the doctors. I had some referrals
Yep.
and some people had said, yeah, I worked with this person. They're pretty good. And we did it. And actually, the nurse practitioner that I hired, she's not working there anymore, but she's on the board of directors there. So
Mhm.
indirectly, she's still there. So it's just one. So I should probably reach out to that one, go join the board so I can change that and say they're all still there. I want my
That's right.
stats 100%. Come on, let's go. But anyway, Sean, I love this conversation. Where can people find out more about you and all this amazing work you're doing?
Yeah, so you can come to go to Frazier and Deeter's website and check out a whole bunch about who we are, our culture, the type of services we offer. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active. I try to write, some articles here. I'm
Hmm.
involved with some podcasts and do some write-ups with HR Magazine and everything like that. So you can find me on LinkedIn, or you can come to our website and check us out.
Yeah, definitely have all that in the show notes. So, Sean, thank you for being you and really appreciate your time today.
Awesome, Michael. Take care. Talk soon.